Capricorn 12, student of nature lecturing. This is all about dealing with the challenges of physicality, of physical life. We live in an age where scientific materialism is the dominant force, the dominant belief system. In other words, science explains the rules of the universe, and we believe that. We're structured towards a materialistic attitude to life rather than a spiritual one. And this is a relatively recent development in humankind. The major change, I suppose, came in the Renaissance period, some 500 years ago, before which the Dark Ages, at least in Europe, represented a period when there was just pretty much chaos, not a lot of scientific development, whereas in the Middle East and the East, quite a bit was going on. We've adopted in the West the scientific materialism of the age in order to explore our curiosity. How does it all work? What's the meaning of life on a physical level? We do this for two reasons. Partly because we're curious and we want to understand how things work, but partly because we seek to dominate nature, and we're at risk of being in danger if we don't. So the purpose of science was partly pragmatic and partly intellectual. Now, of course, in order to understand physicality, we need challenges of a physical type. The first and obvious one is we need to find our food and we need to find our shelter. And this puts us in harm's way, typically. It puts us well out of the comfort zone. It puts us into a situation where we're constantly seeking to change our circumstances from uncomfortable and dangerous towards this'll do. And this is something that each and every one of us experiences. Most of us have to do quite a lot to get our food on the table and a roof over our head. And not everyone gets that right. It's quite difficult to work out how to live in the world and get very simple requirements satisfied. We haven't even thought about healthcare, and we haven't even thought about other considerations of the physical world, because these two primary ones, food and shelter, take up so much of our attention. Now, those people who can cope with physical world stuff tend to be asked questions about how to. Many how-to questions are centered around overcoming physical challenge. If you look on the internet now, the how-to videos are mostly about overcoming two things. One is computer science, and the other is physical questions. How to mend this, how to cook that, how to get from somewhere to another place. Now, these are not spiritual questions per se. They don't look as though they have much spiritual content. But I think this degree, Capricorn 12, is questioning whether or not we should limit our sense of what is spiritual to meditative and prayerful activities. It's Capricorn. It's all about earth. And the spirituality of the earth plane is a different thing. It's not the same as the air signs and the water signs and the fire signs want their spirituality. People who are earthy, they want to know that it also works to be informative and to be inspiring and so on. Perhaps necessary conditions of a spiritual wisdom, but does it work? The earth plane people tend to focus on that. So Capricorn 12 is all about getting us to understand that coping with life itself, physical life, is a spiritual experience, is a spiritual challenge. Now, if we want to develop knowledge, we have to meet challenges. Sometimes knowledge can be given to us in the mind, and people who focus on that aspect of knowledge are more scholastic, more intellectual. They tend to find it satisfying to know in theory how something works. They could do it if they tried, in theory. But an earthy person wants to actually see it done. They don't really believe concepts quite as easily. They like hard facts. So the people that actually prove that they've understood how to overcome challenges of the earth plane, because they have it all sorted, they're on top of things. They have a nice home, they have the food that they want, the physical body is in good health, they get exercise, they've worked out how to cope with physicality, and they tend to be passing this message on. Now, passing knowledge on is the function of a teacher. So Capricorn 12 is essentially about teaching. But teachers, true teachers, want their students to know what has been taught. And that knowledge, when we're really being deep and honest and understanding what knowledge is, that knowledge must be an embodiment. We must make knowledge physical for it to be real. Conceptually, we can do lots of things, but can we actually make it work in practice? So these are true teachers that can actually pass across theoretical knowledge with a sense of embodiment and get the student also to experience that embodiment of a wisdom. These teachers give exercises that allow the student to find out for themselves. It's a new dimension, it's a different, deeper dimension of teaching. One little example I used to give students occasionally was to describe to them in full detail something like this. Imagine for yourself a small rectangular item, brown in colour, covered with silver paper, wrapped twice, smelling sweet, tasting delicious. I got them to understand what a chocolate bar is, conceptually. And I said, "Are you satisfied?" They were not satisfied. I said, "You have to eat it. You have to eat the chocolate bar to know what chocolate is." This is embodied wisdom. If you do not prove that a concept is workable, it isn't really wisdom. Wisdom has to be embodied. Knowledge has to be embodied for it to be true and deep. And it takes us into areas where we actually find physical challenges. When we try to embody what we think we know, we come up against small problems, big problems, conceptual problems also. We come up upon challenges which otherwise we would not do. So the whole process of scientific materialism, to take us into a greater depth of understanding of what we're doing on the earth, it takes us into dealing with challenges on the physical plane. And once again, we can quote that beautiful wisdom from Zen: before enlightenment, carry water, chop wood. After enlightenment, carry water, chop wood.